Hey there, I'm Jake. So, I'm 28, working as an accountant in a tiny cubicle and living in a small apartment. It's not exactly glamorous. My older brother, Tim, on the other hand, has always had the perfect life. He was the football captain, prom king, you name it. Growing up, it was always about Tim. I was just the kid buried in books, trying not to fade into the background. Dad used to say, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" And Mom wasn't any better. "Tim's going places. You should learn from him." She'd say, "Yeah, learn how to be someone else." Now, Tim's still the family favorite at 32, while I'm still struggling to be noticed. But thank goodness for Megan, my girlfriend. She's the one person who really sees me. "Jake, you're worth so much more than you think," she told me last night while holding my hand. And then there's Chris, my best friend since college. He's always got my back. "Dude, your family's messed up," he said over beers last week. "You're doing great on your own." I want to believe them. I really do. But every time I visit my family, it all comes flooding back. "Jake, honey," Mom said last Sunday, "you're doing so well at your job. I don't suppose you could help out with some bills?" I bit my tongue. Help out with what? The house was paid off years ago, at least, I thought it was. Then Tim walked in, all charm and swagger. "Mom, Dad, I've got a new proposition for you," he announced, laying out his latest business idea, a tech startup, some revolutionary app. I'd heard it all before, but Mom and Dad, they ate it up. "This could be huge," Dad said, excited. "We should invest." My stomach sank. "Invest with what?" I asked. "The house is paid off, right?" The look they exchanged made my blood run cold. "Well, actually," Mom started, not meeting my eyes. I knew something big was coming, and sure enough, the bomb dropped on Tuesday during dinner. I was barely touching my food when Mom said, casually, "Oh, Jake, honey, we're going to need some help with the mortgage payments. You don't mind, right?" I nearly choked. "Mortgage? What mortgage?" Dad cleared his throat. "Well, we remortgaged the house to invest in Tim's new business venture." The world tilted. I felt sick. "You did what?" Tim, as smug as ever, chimed in. "It's a sure thing, little bro. We'll all be rolling in money soon." I couldn't believe it. They'd risked the home we grew up in, the one thing our family had paid off, on one of Tim's wild schemes. "How much?" I asked. The number Dad mumbled was more than I earned in a year. "And you expect me to help pay for this?" My voice was rising, but I couldn't control it. Mom looked hurt. "Well, it's for the family, Jake. We all need to pitch in." I left that night in a daze. As soon as I got home, I called Megan. "They did what?" she exclaimed, just as shocked as I was. When I told Megan, she said, "Jake, that's not okay. You need to stand up to them." Chris said the same thing the next night over beers. "Dude, they can't put this on you. It's their mistake, not yours." They were right. I knew they were. But after years of being the good son, the peacekeeper, it was hard to break the habit. Still, something didn't sit right with me. So, I started digging into Tim's business. It wasn't hard. He'd been bragging all over social media. Red flags were everywhere, vague plans, inflated projections, and no real product to show. Armed with spreadsheets, I confronted my parents. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the obvious issues. "This business is a house of cards." But they wouldn't listen. "You're just jealous," Dad accused. "Tim knows what he's doing." Mom was gentler, but just as dismissive. "Honey, we believe in your brother. Why can't you?" I left their house feeling like I was losing my mind. Was I the only one who saw this disaster coming? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to Tim's past failures, the food truck that never launched, the social media app that tanked. Each time, he walked away fine, while others paid the price. Something clicked. I started digging deeper, calling in favors from college friends who worked in finance. What I found chilled me to the bone: a trail of failed businesses, unpaid debts, and burned investors. How had my parents missed all this? But I knew the answer. They saw what they wanted to see: golden boy Tim, who could do no wrong. Staring at the evidence on my computer, I felt a resolve harden inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. My parents' future, their home, it was all at risk. I picked up my phone, hesitated for a second, then called Chris. "I need your help. We're going to expose Tim for who he really is." As I hung up, a mix of determination and dread washed over me. This was going to get ugly, but sometimes you have to tear things down to build them back up, right? Little did I know, the real storm was just beginning. Chris and I spent weeks burning the midnight oil, digging into Tim's business like our lives depended on it, and in a way, they did. One night, Chris pointed at his laptop. "Dude, look at this. These numbers don't add up. It's like he's pulling revenue out of thin air." I leaned in, feeling a pit form in my stomach. "Can we prove it?" Chris nodded grimly. "With some more digging, yeah, we can nail him." The deeper we went, the worse it got. Fake invoices, shell companies, money disappearing into offshore accounts. Tim's business wasn't just shady, it was a complete fraud, and my parents' future was balancing on top of it. I felt sick. My own brother, a criminal. "What are you going to do?" Megan asked one night, concern on her face. I ran my hands through my hair, torn. "I don't know. If I expose him, it'll destroy my parents, but if I don't, they could lose everything," she finished softly. The next family dinner was torture. Watching Tim brag about his success, knowing the truth, made my blood boil. After dinner, I cornered him. "I know what you're doing, Tim. The fake invoices, the shell companies, all of it." For a moment, fear flashed in his eyes, but then his charm was back. "Come on, little bro," he laughed, slapping my back. "You're imagining things. Leave the business to the pros, huh?" But I stood firm. "I'm an accountant, Tim. I know cooked books when I see them. This ends now, or I'm going to the authorities." That's when he switched tactics. His smile faded, his eyes hardened. "You really want to do that to mom and dad? Break their hearts? Ruin their retirement? Some son you are." Before I could respond, Mom walked in. "Everything okay in here?" Tim's mask slipped back on instantly. "Just fine, Mom. Jake was just congratulating me on the business." I wanted to protest, but the warning look in his eyes stopped me. "Not here, not now." The next few days were hell. I was on edge, distracted. Megan noticed. "Jake, this is consuming you," she said. "Maybe you should let the authorities handle it." But I couldn't. This was my family. I had to fix it. I threw myself into gathering more evidence, sleepless nights poring over financial records, making calls to Tim's supposed clients. Chris was worried. "Man, you're going to burn out. We've got enough to nail him." But it wasn't enough for me. I needed an airtight case, no way for Tim to wriggle out of it. Then, we caught a break. One of Tim's ex-employees reached out, offering to blow the whistle. "I've got emails," he said, "proof that Tim told us to falsify records." This was it, the smoking gun. As I compiled all the evidence, I felt a mix of triumph and dread. This would expose Tim and save my parents from financial ruin, but it would also shatter their world. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and called my parents. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk. It's about Tim, and you're not going to like what I have to say." The die was cast. There was no going back now. Little did I know, the confrontation to come would change our family forever. The family gathering felt like the calm before a storm. I had planned everything carefully, evidence ready, with Chris and Megan on standby. "You sure about this?" Megan whispered as we walked in. I nodded, grimly determined. "It's now or never." Dinner was tense, the small talk strained. Finally, I cleared my throat. "I have something to show you all," I said, pulling out a folder. Tim's eyes narrowed. "What's this about, Jake?" I laid out the evidence, piece by damning piece: fake invoices, shell companies, misappropriated funds. Mom gasped. "This can't be right." Dad's face darkened. "Jake, what are you trying to pull?" But as the evidence mounted, their disbelief turned to shock. Tim tried to deflect. "It's all a misunderstanding. Jake's just jealous, twisting things." Then the doorbell rang. Tim's business partner stood at the door, looking grim. "I can't do this anymore, Tim," he said. "We need to come clean." What followed was a confession that left us all stunned. More scams, more lies, a web of deceit bigger than I had imagined. Tim's facade crumbled. He begged, pleaded, tried to manipulate, but the truth was out. Mom broke down. Our home, everything we've worked for. Dad just sat there, shell-shocked. I felt hollow. This was justice, but at what cost? In the aftermath, Tim's business collapsed, his reputation in ruins. He faced potential legal consequences, while my parents dealt with the fallout, now struggling with the remortgaged house. "We were such fools," Dad said, his voice breaking. "I made a decision then. I'll help with the mortgage," I said, "but on my terms. No more blind trust, no more enabling." They agreed, humbled and grateful. A year passed, and slowly, things began to change. I got a promotion at work, my confidence growing. Megan and I moved in together, our relationship stronger after weathering the storm. My parents and I rebuilt our relationship too. on more equal footing. They really saw me, for the first time. Tim tried to reconcile, full of apologies and promises to change, but we all stood firm. You made your choices, I told him, now live with them. It wasn't easy to cut him out, but it was necessary. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've grown. I found my voice and stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. I'm proud of you, Megan says, squeezing my hand. I smile, feeling at peace. I'm proud of me too. The road wasn't easy, but it led me here, to self-respect, healthy relationships, and a life built on honesty and integrity. Tim's actions had consequences, as they should. My parents learned a hard lesson about blind faith and favoritism. And me? I learned that sometimes being the good son means doing the hard thing, the right thing, even when it hurts. As for the future, who knows? But one thing's certain, I'm facing it on my own terms, head held high, no longer living in anyone's shadow. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought within our own families, but they're often the most important ones to win. And that's the end of Jake's journey, from overlooked son to family savior. Now, here's a question for you. If you were in Jake's position, would you have exposed Tim's fraudulent activities, knowing it could potentially destroy your family's relationships and financial stability? Or would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? At what point does protecting your parents from the truth become harmful enabling? It's a tough moral dilemma with no easy answers. What would you do in Jake's shoes? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If Jake's story of standing up to toxic family dynamics resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you want more stories of personal growth and justice, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more of these important stories. Thanks for watching, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this challenging